Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Age of Empires 3 Insight, and today we've got something special for you. This is the first series in the Age of Empires 3 Insight New Year's Invitational Tournament. This is a 16-player tournament with a $100 cash prize for whoever takes first place. This tournament is unique in a few different ways, most notably in that all the map pools are chosen by the audience in my Twitch livestream. I'll leave a link to my Twitch channel in the description. I encourage you to follow that channel and keep your eyes peeled for when I stream, because you will then have the opportunity to choose what maps the players play on. The other main difference is that the civs do not reset until the tiebreaker match, so game number 5 in a best of 5 or game 7 in a best of 7. This shows us who the better player truly is, because for one to be a true pro, they must be the master of many a civilization. With all that being said, I hope you enjoy the games you're about to see. Ladies and gents, may I present to you Gibson versus n0eL. Welcome to the first game, the first series that we are going to be doing for the Age of Empires 3 Insight Invitational New Year's Tournament. It's a best of 5 series between n0eL and Lion's Den, aka Gibson, and today casting alongside me is, of course, Dulkrad. Dulkrad, how do you feel about these two players and the map that they are on?
Well, both of these players I know somewhat well. n0eL is famous admin for the ESOC team, and he is a pretty strong player. I played against him in the second chance tournament in the semifinals, and I think that he did very well in that. I think that he is a strong player, doesn't have any particular style to speak of, outside of just being a solid all-around. He does have some notable plays in his colonial China, but otherwise he's pretty standard, just a solid player. Lion's Den, on the other hand, is, I think, a relatively slow player in terms of his APM. You can see if you ever watch a stream, he doesn't play too quickly, doesn't use too many control groups, but he plays surprisingly well for that. In other words, he is able to pretty consistently hit Captain and Major without really using any control group, which many people would say that, how can you play without control groups? How can you play with only the mouse?
Definitely. Perhaps that's just because on his streams he's a bit more lazy, and maybe he'll actually make use of those mechanics in this game, and perhaps he'll play even better because of it. And spawning in the north of the map, we do have n0eL playing as the Iroquois in the color green, and in the south of the map we do have Lion's Den playing as the Indians in the color purple. And right off the bat, let's go ahead and check those treasures and see who's leading so far.
Looks like both players just took up the normal sort of 0 Guardian treasures that were available to them. n0eL got the nice 55 coin, which I think had 1 Guardian, but he didn't really have to expend any resources on that. He actually got one of the, whoever it is, the Outlaw Rider. He's taking a treasure right now, the 60 wood treasure, which is a very good treasure. Of course, wood is one of the most important resources in the game.
For
and
sure.
We have Gibson has a mirror treasure, the 80 wood treasure, which has 3 cougars spawning, but it's, I think, a little bit hard to see. Yeah, I don't think he's going to see it this game.
And perhaps when he does see it, it's just going to be too late to really take full advantage of it.
Exactly, yeah. A little bit of a contention here at this point in the map. There was the 70 food treasure that both players do want to take, but it's not easy for either player to really secure it. I think 3 cougars tends to be a little bit difficult. Just the cougars move so quickly that it's hard to creep on them. And what usually happens is that neither player is going to really want to be able to try to take this treasure because it's so hard for both players to take safely.
For sure, for sure. So right off the bat, what strategies do you think, without really seeing enough information to know for sure, but what strategy do you think each player is going to go for in this matchup?
So with Iroquois, I honestly have no idea. They're known for one thing on the Robot Entertainment patch, and that's putting a bunch of things in your base 4 minutes into the game. on the EP that doesn't really work, and we're on the EP right now. So it's going to be interesting to see actually what n0eL does to make this work. Oh yeah, he is taking that treasure. I think Lionsden, on the other hand, he is going to go for a pretty standard aggressive India play. I don't think he's going for a full 10-10. Yeah, we do see he's queuing up villagers, or he has made 13 villagers total.
Which slows down that rush a little bit, but arguably it's a lot better
yeah.
because you have an economy to back everything up with.
I think we'll still see a forward aggro out of him, try to probably be the aggressor in the matchup, and it's going to be really interesting to see how n0eL responds to that.
Yeah, definitely. And so far we're seeing some pretty standard card orders of what we'd expect from players of this PR. We see 3 villagers coming from n0eL and distributivism coming from Lionsden.
Right, those are pretty much the standard ones, and I really do enjoy this banter coming out of both players. I think both players are fans of a football team that just lost, but it seems like they're in pretty good spirits right now.
Definitely. Whoever loses this one, though, is going to have 2 disappointments in the day, so...
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hopefully it won't bring them too much on tilt. I think, yeah, n0eL is currently aging up right now, as is Lionsden. And I have to see which text being researched. The Wise Woman, I'm not actually sure which one that corresponds to, of course. I and nobody else in the game actually plays Iroquois, and so we don't really know what they can do. And
For sure.
I'm not quite sure what the Wise Woman is, but it looks like he's not going to be going for an aggressive play this game.
Yeah, on the EP, the Iroquois are considered to be kind of underpowered, but I think that's more so because nobody plays them, and they haven't really learned how to work around the nerfs that were given to them and what to do to optimize the Iroquois' build order.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I am really interested in seeing how this game works out. Lionsden is putting down this defensive aggro, so I think both players are going to be looking to do a pretty safe build, not going for any early rush, trying to play more economically focused. And that's both exciting to see because it means that we're going to see probably a very nice game playing out, and it's probably also reasonable on this map, which encourages this defensive sort of play style.
For sure. I kind of would have liked to see that aggro perhaps a little bit more aggressive, though. Maybe right here.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see on this map there tends to be a lot of hunts kind of towards the center of the trade route, and also focused a little bit on certain sides of the map. So you can see Gibson has 4 hunts on this left side of the map, whereas the right side of the map is a little bit more sparse. And with n0eL, he actually seems to be, I think he herded one of the hunts, so the both sides of the map look kind of sparse to him, although he has these 2 deer around the half map. But both players are probably going to be fighting over this left side of the map as a result, because you can see all the hunts on here.
Yeah, for sure. You obviously want to have map control in the areas of the map that matter.
Right.
I'm kind of surprised, though, from n0eL that we did not see a trade post go down. Typically, that's something that you want to do as the Iroquois.
Yeah, it is part of their EP change, where they lose a lot of their wood early on. It means that they can't make a trade post as easily. But despite that, it would be very good to get a trading post on this map. Of course, this map has 4 trading posts, and every civ likes to have trading posts in some sense. And I think Iroquois is certainly one that likes to have them a little bit more than most.
And yes, the Wise Woman age up, I believe, was actually the crates that came, so it'll help him get to age 3 a little bit faster. Perhaps he's going for a fast fortress, because the next card he did send was 600 gold, and he is now sitting at 1,000 gold and is just gathering food.
Meanwhile, Gibson is going for a very economically focused build. He sent the second Wood Trickle card as his second card in this game. So he is going to be playing very defensively, or very, very economically focused as well.
Perhaps that's the right answer.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. Unfortunately, I don't really have much experience against Iroquois, and I don't have much experience with Iroquois, so, who knows what you should do.
Exactly.
But I think it's a safe build in this case, because he's pretty confident that not much aggression is going to be coming out of n0eL, and so I do like the choices that he's been making in this game.
Nice age, he says.
I think he knows that it's coming at this point, that there is going to be a fast fortress from n0eL.
For sure, because there's no units.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that going with this economic build that we're seeing from Lion's Den is the right answer because n0eL is perhaps sacrificing a little bit of his economy in order to get that age up as fast, and India has the unique ability to they have basically every kind of unit you really need in Colonial. They have the counter to light infantry, the counter to heavy infantry. They have their goon type unit, so they don't really have a very big reason to age up except for shipments.
That's a pretty good point about India. They do have all 4 units that constitute a composition, and so they're probably one of the best civs to play an age down with. Most civs, if your opponent goes to Fortress, you want to be following that in some regard. But with India, it's not that big of a deal. You can play an H down. It's not ideal, certainly, but it is something that you can do and be able to win the game off of, especially if you are able to punish their age up.
For sure. Looking at the that's the wrong tab actually. Text completed. Let's see. All right, so n0eL has hunting dogs and he has placer mines, and let's see, Lion's Den has a good deal more. So
yeah, that's also very important to note. Both the text completed and the shipment order that they went in. Lion's Den did 2 effectively villager shipments as his first 2 shipments, whereas n0eL has only sent 1 villager shipment. So Lion's Den's economy will outscale n0eL's in a sense. He also has all these market techs upgraded.
Yeah.
And the Iroquois don't really get market techs outside of these tier 1 techs, the placer mines and hunting. So n0eL definitely will have a better economy. It just requires him to be able to hold any pressure that n0eL sends.
Yeah, and this is reflected in the economic unit population at the moment. He's 12 villagers ahead of n0eL at the moment.
Exactly, yeah. And a few forest prowlers coming out, and we got, I think, 1 villager kill, but it's not going to be quite enough yet. Lion's Den does have enough military to actually stop this, and we'll see if he can actually hold off the shipments coming out.
Looking at this composition, though, I think that Lion's Den is in a really good place to hold off this initial push by n0eL.
Right. You can see that n0eL is going for a sort of Euro comp, where he's doing what's effectively goon skirm. Forest prowlers are basically skirmishers, musket riders are basically dragoons. This is a pretty standard composition for Euro civs, but the issue with it is that it doesn't have really a lot of pushing potential. You can't siege down buildings with this.
Yeah,
what that means is it's strong against units, but it can't push and win a game for you.
Yeah, it would take forever for these units to take down that aggro fort, for example.
Right. I wouldn't even go for it. He can maybe take down this consulate. The consulate is a little bit far forward, but that's maybe the best he can do so far. So Lion's Den is fine just sitting back, and that's exactly what he's doing right now.
Now, perhaps if we had seen a Town Destroyer sent by n0eL, do you think it might be a little bit less consequential, that he doesn't have a lot of siege in his composition?
Yeah, that would be an interesting strategy if he did that, and that would certainly change the dynamic of the game a little bit. The one issue with that is that it would remove... It's of course a shipment as a cost, and that would slow down this pressure. And so you could say, yeah, he can get Town Destroyer, but now he's not going to have as big of an army composition.
It's kind of a balanced thing what we're going to decide, and this is a great pop that we're getting from Lion's Den here. There's so many units on the map against what against what n0eL has at the moment.
Yeah, the Solar didn't quite do as much damage as he was likely hoping. He is getting this big Minutemen pop with sentries and the irregulars, so I think he may still stand to win this fight. The Monk's actually getting a really good stop off as well.
Yeah, those monks actually do area damage, for those of you that might not know, so that's actually really strong if you get into a cluster of tightly packed up units.
Yeah. I am noticing perhaps that there could be a little bit of lag. I will ask the players after this if it's mostly tolerable. I know that n0eL really doesn't like it when the game lags, as he showed against me, but this Lion's Den did push this back pretty convincingly. He didn't win the game off of this, but I do think that he is in a very strong position right now.
For sure. Even with that being said, though, even if he doesn't have the strength to push right now with what he has and just siege down everything that n0eL has, look at the economy right now. He's 7 villagers ahead. He still has a very large military lead. He could just kind of sit back, continue to hold off pressure, and just boom behind it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think he is in a perfectly good position. It's the onus is on n0eL to actually be able to do something about this. He tried to push, it didn't work. He now needs to find a different way into Lansden's base. We could see him either taking the trade route, trying to catch up economically, because he does, even though he hasn't been able to break Lansden, he does still have map control in a sense. Or he could try to maybe change up his unit composition a little bit and try to push in a different way.
For sure. And being that this has gone into Fortress, another thing to point out is that their starting mines have either disappeared completely or are running really low, and so they're going to have to move out to these slightly farther out mines, and those are going to be a lot more easy to raid.
Mm-hmm. It is important to know that this map doesn't have that many mines. You can see there's I guess 4 mines on Lansden's side currently, and about that many on n0eL's side. I think he did exhaust one of them, and that's not that really that many mines in this game. So both players are going to start to having to worry about that as the game goes on, and certainly both players do like to have mines. I think India probably requires a little bit more gold than the Iroquois, as I know that Iroquois Tomahawks don't cost gold, and their IN don't either.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things, like you said, there's not a lot of mines in this map, and so that kind of typically actually causes better players to tend to stay inside of the Colonial Age, because Colonial units tend to cost more food and less gold. And once you age up, and he's making the Iroquois equivalent of a goon skirm, and that actually costs a lot of gold, and so he's going to dry up his mines pretty fast. And if the other player is having a mostly food-heavy composition, they'll be able to continue to make units for longer.
Yeah, there's a pretty significant fight going down here, and I think Lansden actually caught the better of n0eL in this case. He didn't quite have enough musket riders to beat these Sowar and Hussar that we see. I do know that Lansden's Hussar and or really his cap control in general isn't optimal. He tends to be a little bit overzealous on the right click rather than doing some sort of attack move. But even so, he is actually able to clean a lot of this up, and he may be standing to win the game.
It's also worth to note that he still has his Minutemen in there. His Minutemen have really paid for themselves.
Right. Yeah, they've been having a lot of effect, and still 3 of them left. And, I think n0eL's a little bit too distracted to actually even be able to target him down.
He's doing his best that he can do to kite back, and it does look like he's going to be able to hold this off pretty effectively. We do see some reinforcing Sowar coming in, as well as more Gurkha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I'm n0eL, I'm not too worried about the Gurkha. I'm pretty confident in my Forest Prowlers in this case to hold for me. But it is important that he has enough musket riders to be able to stop these Sowar, and we see so many Sowar coming out. Lansden can really just make whatever unit he wants with his economy. And n0eL is really forced to be able to have enough anti-cap at any point. If he doesn't, he basically loses the game immediately.
Yeah, and he started to make Tomahawks, and I'm curious as to whether that is because he feels he needs them right now, or because he's starting to realize he's running out of gold, because his next mines are extremely exposed, and I mean, I honestly don't think that this one would be very safe to gather from in the first place, being so close to the other player.
Yeah, it's a dangerous mine to take. I think he's going to try to take it anyway, because it's a little bit far off, and Lansden may not have even seen it. He does have this mine available for him, but I think that the Tomahawks were just this desperate need to have some sort of anti-cab. He lost that last battle because he didn't have enough anti-cab, and we can see he might even lose this battle because he doesn't have enough. So it's really important for him to do.
Tomahawks are great units, but they don't stand up very well against this large massive Gurkha that he has.
Right. He has actually defended this pretty well, I think, for what it was. A lot of those Sowar died, and I would say he didn't really have enough Tomahawks to kill as many Sowar as he did. But he's gotten pretty much all the Sowar down. Another 5 coming in, though, and I think that might actually be it for n0eL. He is in a difficult position.
We do see GG coming from n0eL, and he does resign the first game. So game number 1 in the best of 5 series in the round of 16 between n0eL and Lansden goes to Lansden. That game is pretty interesting, actually. Do you think Iroquois was perhaps just the wrong choice, that it is indeed just too weak of a civilization to use competitively?
I wouldn't say that immediately. I think that it's a civilization that is very unexplored, though. Even top players probably look mostly at their main build order on RE, which is just, putting all the stuff in the opponent's base as quickly as you can. And there's not much reason to explore beyond that. I think n0eL probably hasn't refined some of these build orders quite as much as he'd like to. and there's not really that many top players that are looking into build for the Euro and trying to refine them as well. So, if he tightened up his build a little bit, he might have been able to take that game.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to game number 2 in the best of 5 series between n0eL and Lion's Den. This is, of course, part of the Age of Empires 3 Insight Invitational New Year's tournament, which is a 16-player tournament with a grand prize of $100 to whoever does take the first place. And so far, Lion's Den has actually taken the lead in this game with 1-0 against n0eL. Co-casting alongside me today is, of course, n0eL. n0eL, how do you feel about these two civilizations underneath these two players?
Well, I think that China versus Russia is maybe not a bad matchup for China, but it is one that I struggle with a lot. I've been playing a lot of China recently, and I've historically been very bad against Russia. And I found that this is a particularly difficult match for China because the Russian just comes in with a bunch of units and then I die. n0eL, on the other hand, I think he's a little bit more experienced with China than I am, so I think he's probably prepared for that. But the other thing is that n0eL likes to play colonial China, as opposed to the standard fast fortress. So we could see him going for a colonial China play. And I honestly don't know how that would do against Russians. My inclination is to say it would be bad, because step riders are a bad unit, and you need cavalry against Russia. But
for sure.
Maybe n0eL has something ready for this.
Perhaps. And spawning in the west of the map, we do have Lion's Den playing as the Russian player in the color purple. And in the right hand, the east side of the map, we do have n0eL playing as the Chinese in the color green. I do not think we're going to see water play from either of these players and see them utilize this water. And of the two civilizations, I think Russia is perhaps the civilization that is more prone to taking the water.
Yeah, we can see Lion's Den does have some water cards in his deck. He does have the Schooners card as well as the boat shipments in his second and third age deck. But despite that, I don't think that he will be playing on the water. I don't think it's something that is pretty common for him. He did say lag is pretty bad. I'm going to hope that it just works itself out a little bit. I was looking at the deck, so that caused a little bit of a lag spike. But I'll let the players know.
Alright, so let's go ahead and check and see what treasures. Okay, so n0eL right off the bat, he took a 150 food treasure, which I think is a pretty big treasure for any civilization, really.
You did cut out there for me.
I was saying that n0eL, I was checking the treasures, and n0eL actually took a 150 food treasure, which is a pretty big treasure to take as any civilization.
Oh yeah, that's especially useful with China, which of course doesn't have to worry about, or doesn't have to wait for their villagers to complete before aging up, which so it effectively just puts a strict increase or decrease to their age up time, which is very nice, of course, for any of the Asian civs.
And of course, his first card that he sends is Northern Refugees, which gives you one settler, or rather, villager per village and town center that you do have.
Yeah, that's pretty standard for China.
And
there are, I guess, different builds available where you can do one village plus a trading post, but the more common ones do 2 villages. And okay, yeah, we actually are seeing a trading post contention here. I think this trading post will go up. It's going to be close, actually. Okay, the trading post goes up, yeah.
This is actually a great question that was not covered. In the ESOC tournaments, is Alt D allowed?
No, it is not.
Okay, then we're going to go with that then.
I think officially it is considered cheating, and so... well, actually... Some people have said it's cheating. I think, famously, ESO, or whoever was running ESO at the time, was saying it wasn't, but as far as we're concerned, it is, so don't do it. n0eL is going to get a little bit of compensation, though. He's going to get the 60 wood treasure.
And looking at his age up, n0eL's already aging up. That 150 food definitely did help out with that.
Yeah. And Lionsden actually has not aged up yet. He's going to be aging with 17 villagers, which is pretty much non-standard now for Russians. They tend to do 14 villager age up on the Asian dynasties. 17 is what you do when you want absolutely no idle time, but it does mean you age up at 5 minutes or later. So it's something that you don't see much anymore.
Okay, so how do you feel about this? He sent the Advanced Monastery card that gives him a church, or rather a monastery rickshaw.
Yeah, you know what? I have heard of a build that involves this. I don't remember exactly what the build does, but I do know that this is involved in the build, and I believe it was Maito who actually was telling me about this build. So this is not unheard of. This does exist.
And then Lionsden is going with the schooners. That's what he sent. So he's starting to wall up, and he's making that first dock. I'm curious to how this is going to go out. We're going to see a little bit non-standard build order from both civilizations. We're going to see n0eL try to play in the colonial, and we're going to see Lionsden try to boom.
So I actually completely missed this, but n0eL did age up with Disciple Wonder. So yes, this is a Disciple Rush coming out of n0eL. And meanwhile, Lionsden is doing something non-standard himself by doing schooners. So both players are doing something a little bit atypical, and I think it's going to lead to a very interesting game.
Well, you see n0eL taking this 150 coin treasure up here.
Yeah. Now, it should be noted that Lionsden actually did see all the disciples, so he knows that something is going on.
Do you think perhaps he aged up with this because he felt that all the treasures on the map would make the difference and be worth that? Or do you think he's actually going to try to push into these walls and into his base with the disciples?
I think that the treasures do help. I think that this map does have some pretty good treasures, so that does contribute. As for why he did a Disciple Rush, as opposed to just anything else, I'm actually not sure. It's not, China does have better strategies available to them.
For sure.
It looks like he's trying to push here, but
I feel like against Russia, this is probably one of the worst civilizations to do it against because they have their blockhouses.
It does seem like it's a bit of a questionable play. I will say that, but he is pushing pretty hard right now, and we have the 9-chunk pikemen coming out, and so he's going to be able to take down these walls pretty quickly, and the blockhouse is right after. The issue is what happens if Lionsden puts out 10 streamlets.
And so he's backed this up with some pikemen as well. So there's a lot of siege potential in this. But really, all that Lionsden needs to do to counter all of this is just send Strelets and make Strelets.
Exactly. He's sending 700 wood right now, and that is going to let him make a lot more blockhouses. But if he makes a couple of Strelets, it will be difficult for n0eL to actually push that down. I think the Disciples can do it, but it requires a relatively small number of Strelets. Right, like, Disciples are effectively cavalry when the number of units is small. When the number of units gets large, they become very weak.
For sure, you just gotta focus them down, and there's no big deal. So he's just opting to make a very large amount of blockhouses.
Yeah, we do see one blockhouse is going down, and but at the same time, it hasn't had really the desired effect. Most likely, we see 5 of the 9 Jiang have actually died now. And I think the rest of them are going to die pretty soon. He's only going to get one blockhouse, and then Lionsden just made another one. And killing these blockhouses really doesn't do anything either.
The only thing it's really doing for him is deducting 250 wood from the Lionsden score.
Right. It's you kill it and you say, okay, great. Now what? It doesn't really affect Lionsden's economy. It doesn't really stop him from producing more units because he does have extra blockhouses.
Exactly.
So this is somewhat ineffective, really.
And he spent 700 resources on getting those 9 pikemen, and then he sacrificed possibly a better age up on getting these disciples, and he's lost them all, and he's taken out 2 blockhouses and a bit of... Was it 2? I think it was 2. And some walls. Okay, so 1 blockhouse and some walls.
Yeah. So, yeah, a little bit of a questionable strategy, and actually Lionsden re-walled. So now these disciples are trapped. I think that it's not a disaster yet. These disciples can actually still harass villagers, and Lionsden has not made any units and has no capability to produce units. So, okay, he does have 10 streamlets in queue, so he may be able to take these or clean these up. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that this hasn't really paid off in the way that n0eL wanted to. He is, however, gearing up to age up, so I think this is not the end of his game yet. He does have the opportunity to go up to third age and then do what China is meant to do, which is smash cav into enemy bases.
And we do see the Strela come out and start to take some shots off at the Disciples, and he's going to lose those. Lionsden is booming from 2 docks with schooners, and he has sent 700 and 600 wood back to back, so he has the potential to put a lot of boats in the water, and as well as make a lot of Strelets. And we do see n0eL aging up now, though.
Yeah, he is going to be aging up, I believe, Porcelain Tower, and this means that he does have an opportunity to win this game. He probably didn't do as much damage in H2 as he wanted to, but he does have map control. He does have a pretty solid economy with this Porcelain Tower, and despite Lionsden's interesting strategy with the boats, I think that he is still in a relatively difficult position. China has a lot of power in H3, and I think that they'll be able to do quite a bit of good stuff.
Honestly, I think perhaps with the Disciple Rush that he did, he would have been better suited to taking out this town center and dropping some villages up in this area to take those hunts, because by building a wall and setting schooners, you're kind of resigning yourself to playing defensive for the majority of the game.
Absolutely, yeah. It's unfortunate that he didn't take that training post, because that's going to continuously give Lionsden an opportunity to get a lot of XP, and it was basically free for n0eL to take it down. It wasn't really going to come at a loss. I think we are going to see him notice it and take it out pretty soon, and it would be nice to see him actually take the trade line afterwards.
Exactly. Especially being typically a civilization that will play in the Fortress Age, having no trade posts is kind of counterintuitive.
Absolutely, yeah. China definitely loves to take at least one trading post during the game. n0eL is actually, Lionsden is actually doing pretty well right now in his ability to defend its water. He's actually preemptively built blockhouses. He built a blockhouse right here, and you can see he's putting a villager up here now to make another. So this water is actually going to be very difficult for n0eL to take if he actually is interested in doing so. And the issue with not taking it is that Lionsden's economy is going to be extremely powerful.
Exactly.
He's even sending economic theory, which is going to make it even better.
This is just a decision that you have to make. Are you going to invest resources into taking away his ability to make resources from the water, or are you just going to leave it be and invest the same resources into pushing his main base and just sieging down his town?
Exactly, yeah. Now, he has allied with the French, which is a little bit non-standard for China, which tends to ally with British, and he sent the intervention card and got 5 grenadiers. This is an interesting decision. On paper, it makes sense. The idea being these grenadiers have a lot of siege potential, and what Lionsden is doing is making a lot of things that need to be sieged down. Despite that, it's not clear yet if it is going to pay off. Lionsden's making another layer of wall and upgrading that wall, so he's playing very defensively so far. He's probably not going to be pushing out for another 10 minutes.
And honestly, he doesn't need to. He's ahead over 12 villagers right now, and he has the entire water that he's going to profit from.
Right. Yeah, there's in some sense there's no need for him to push out. He is running low on resources inside his base. He does have the water, but his villager economy is not going to be as good as he'd like it to be. He's really committing himself to taking the water and sustaining himself off of that, and meanwhile hoping that on land he doesn't suffer too much. But n0eL is coming in with another push now.
And it's going to take him a good deal of time to take out these 2 walls, and time is the only thing that Lionsden really needs right now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the upgraded walls actually do have a lot of hit points. On EP, the normal walls have gone down to 1500 HP, but upgraded walls remain the same. And I actually wasn't even aware that you could upgrade the walls in H2, but apparently you can, and it's going very well for him.
For sure.
So, okay, the Lionsden score did drop a lot and shot back up, and that's because he's aging up to H3, which is not a bad idea in this case. You can see he's putting down 2 stables, which is pretty much what you need to do against this Grenadier Disciple composition, which is something I didn't expect to be saying.
For sure. Do you think we're going to see perhaps some Boyard, Preaknik like boxing, and just go in there and siege down his town center in wonders?
At this point, I could see anything happen in this game. I think it's very rare to see a Disciple Rush coming out of any player, especially a Disciple Rush countered by a Russian schooner boom. So, I wouldn't put it past Lionsden to do anything pretty much this game. And yeah, he's actually sending more Grenadiers.
I suppose that's
So
the
he
right
does have to
thing. I mean,
It's the right thing to do, yeah, but he does have to be careful to make sure he doesn't lose to 5 Cossacks.
yeah, for sure. I mean, at this very moment, all Leinster has is Strelets, and those are obviously going to lose against Grenadiers. Oh, but look at that. We have a 10 pop.
He has to be very careful. He has to micro these disciples extremely well to actually win this. One thing that is going for him, though, is that his economy is actually not that bad.
Ooh,
You can
and
see he has
6.
49 villagers.
16 Cossack versus these
Yeah.
disciples and these Grenadiers. This is just going to be terrible for n0eL. Oh, we might even see him just resign, honestly. And Minutemen.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about this one. I think the Grenadiers are going to die, but Disciples are actually a pretty good unit. Oh, and he actually had the Manchu pop. That might be exactly what he needs, I think.
I mean, the Manchu are definitely going to take care of all these Cossacks. Then perhaps he can just finish sieging down the town center, because Manchu do have... I mean, they don't have great siege, but the town center is already over halfway down.
The Manchu were a little bit late. He probably wanted them just a little bit earlier. Probably, maybe even wanted to push once he got the Manchu. But you can see these Disciples actually are doing quite a bit of work, and the part of their effectiveness is that the Disciples actually can spawn other Disciples, and the Monk can always replenish lost Disciples. And they're just a good unit on their own. I mean, they seem weak initially, but they can actually do quite a bit. And so he actually won this battle, and I think he can actually win this game now.
And looking at the economic score, they are still fairly close. Leinster still is ahead economically as far as unit population goes, but like you mentioned earlier, he's running out of resources inside his base other than wood, and so he's going to be forced to venture out, or he's just going to have Idlevilles, and Idleville might as well be a Deadville.
Exactly, yeah. And he has stopped making fishing boats, and at some point the fishing boats are not going to run, or they're going to run out of fish, sorry. And that will mean that he's going to be on this mill economy, where n0eL is going to be able to hunt for quite a little bit longer. Probably has 10 to 15 minutes more of hunting available to him.
Yeah.
And Leinster is not going to be able to do that.
And n0eL essentially owns like 80% of the map. And look at this, he's actually walling Leinster in, which this is not a bad idea, honestly.
Not a bad idea at all. It maybe commits us to another 30 minutes of this game, which I'm not going to complain about. But it means that both players are content to just play fairly defensively and not worry too much about winning right now. Which is, I'm not going to complain about it, but
this is not what I was expecting
no,
for the first matches in a competitive tournament, but I'm not complaining. It's always nice to see things that are just out of the ordinary. I mean, in past tournaments, we've seen new metas arise and new strats, so, you know, it could always happen again. Those of you at home watching, just take note of what n0eL's doing and make sure that you send Grenadiers and Disciples next time we play China.
Exactly. I think the Grenadier Disciple Rush is going to really take out a lot of top players in the next tournament.
For sure.
Yeah. Now he was finally taking down his trading post, and that's good. And he's even bringing the villagers to siege, so you can tell he's really wants to take that down quickly. I think he's making the right decision here. He's taking the trade route. He's made another town center. Likely see him make a third town center pretty soon. He actually has enough resources to age to 3 if he wanted to.
Do you think?
And yeah, he's doing it.
Do you think we're going to see what I think we're going to see? We see Leinster aging up right now, and actually so is n0eL. I'm wondering if we'll see a revolt come from Leinster. I mean, at this point of the game, I don't think that's too outlandish.
I think that would actually be a pretty good idea, right? Because fishing boats don't convert in a revolt, so you do have still an economy, and he does have a good number of villagers. He does have the setup to make that revolt happen. He has enough resources. He just needs a little bit more gold, and you can see he's transferring villagers onto gold right now.
Absolutely, and then he's
So yeah,
going to
I can see a revolt.
he's going to get ironclads, which I think can reach the majority of these wonders.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe. Okay. He's building castles. I know. So he's making a response against something that could happen.
Yeah,
But yeah, some of these wonders are dangerously close.
I mean, he obviously knows that Leinster owns the water completely, and so he's probably just putting those up just in case. I don't think he'd expect a revolt, but he probably would expect, for Leinster to make a couple warships and come to harass him with it.
Yeah, we do see a monitor in queue, so he's not going to be revolting just yet. but the monitor is going to be putting him in a very dangerous position.
Of course,
You have to be very careful against monitors. He's pretty much everything n0eL's got right now.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, once the Asian civilizations lose their wonders, they're not so wonderful anymore.
n0eL probably does outscale Lionsden in the both. Well, maybe not quite in the late game, but he does have the better economy in a sense because he does have this training line, and he's able to make villagers that won't run out of fish.
Exactly. He has so many hunts available to him.
Exactly, yeah. And well, Lionsden is sending a factory right now. He's probably going to send a second factory pretty soon.
And
But
then
he doesn't have that many late game cards. Russia in treaty mode, I believe in treaty mode, or at least in FFA, they like to make a lot of fortresses because they can basically fort hop around the map by letting the musketeers build fortresses, but that doesn't exist in Lionsden's deck. Then again, n0eL doesn't have old Han forms either, so it's not clear actually which player has the better H4. I actually just noticed that n0eL only has 24 cards in his deck, not 25.
he doesn't need the 25th one. It's kind of
I
useless.
suppose not. Well, I mean, old Han reforms would be pretty nice there.
24 cards, grenadiers, disciples, monitors.
So yeah, we see the monitor actually has come out, and it's taking down a couple of these arquebusiers. It is going to be actually very difficult for n0eL to deal with this. You can see it's actually taking down the Conductor right now.
Yeah.
And it can sit back and heal whenever it's low on health, and it's expensive to make, but not so expensive that you can't make another.
Exactly, and he has 2 now down, and so n0eL's either going to have to make warships of his own, or he's going to have to make long-range artillery.
Yeah, we do have the hand mortars coming out, so I think that he is going for the hand artillery route. And this is actually pretty good because it's going to reduce the ability for these ships to fish, and there are actually 2 whales on this side of the map close to n0eL in artillery range. And that is going to have an effect on Lionsden's economy.
For sure. Because whales are, of course, an infinite source of coin that you're going to want to utilize over plantations.
Exactly, yeah. Still not sure, actually, honestly, which player is in the better position.
Economically, I'm going to have to say, as of now, Lionsden. But once he runs out of the fish that he has, which are drying up very quickly, he's not going to have a steady source of food. And then I think n0eL will catch back up.
Right. The other thing is that he just hasn't made it in this game. So.
Yeah. Just a few. Honestly, I could probably just switch over the. Oh, you can't check the post game yet because I have not resigned.
Yeah. So, n0eL is making petards.
Petards, grenadiers, disciples.
The disciple, petard, grenadier, black rider, standard Chinese comp. I think. Oh my.
Let's not forget the Manchu either.
Yeah, the Manchu as well. Honestly, this comp makes sense, right? You have the hand orders of the petards to siege things down, and then protect them with all of your black riders.
Yeah, totally. You know, the petards counter walls.
Yeah. Petards counter walls, and then... well, he doesn't have something that catches streets, right?
I suppose the hand mortars.
Yeah, a little bit.
They don't. They actually don't do a whole lot of damage, though.
The disciples do pretty well because you can just make more disciples when they die. And I think actually, yeah, the disciples are going to do fine here.
He's actually got the petards in hand combats.
So I get the idea. The Chinese monk, Mr. Zhang, he has a lot of hit points, right? So you can't focus him down. He's got like 2,500 hit points, and streelets can't kill him in time. So he just constantly makes disciples and kills all the streelets. And if you want to respond to that, you have to deal with the black riders. So
that's not a bad idea. You win either way. You know,
works.
he's either going to tank a ton of damage that could otherwise go on all these other units, or they're just going to sit there and make disciples. Which one
the
for
disciples,
one?
they make other disciples, right? So it's like an infinite disciple supply. He's just going to push back a little bit here, but I don't think he's doomed yet. I do wish he had brought those hand mortars in to do a little bit more siege damage.
For sure, yeah. Of course, now Lionston can gather from those whales again.
Oh yeah, that's true actually. And he is taking down. You just saw that he actually took down one of those castles. So keeping a few hand mortars around back here would be really nice for him.
Okay, so he waited for a flying crow to show up, and he sent Manchu combat.
He sent Manchu combat.
Manchu combat.
To even look up what that card does.
I'm assuming it improves the Manchus.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't improve any unit that he has. It improves Tiang, Changdao, Keshiks, and Meteor Hammers.
That is counterintuitive.
Doesn't improve any of the units he's making.
New strat.
Okay, he is making a few now. He's making some Meteor Hammers.
Where's my 10 Falcons?
Could have improved, like... Alright. There's just sent Western reforms, but it's working for him, I guess. He is now bringing in all of those hand mortars, and they're actually doing quite a bit of damage to the Strelets. So I think he still stands to be in a good position right now. And then Lionston's composition isn't quite as nonsensical as n0eL's, but he is mixing in a few lance mechs, which are not something that you tend to see Russia make.
I think we've seen all the units that we would not expect to see in one game.
Yeah, well, I think n0eL could really add a few flamethrowers for his competition. And now that I say it, it actually kind of makes sense, right? You see all these Strelets out.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think flamethrowers would do quite well.
And I mean, Lionston, he still has the economic edge, but he's on mills now, and his army is composed of Strelets.
Yeah, it's a Strelet-focused army, and it's not that great because, right? I mean, these cavalry just smash through, and his economy is better, but not so much better that it's insurmountable.
Typically, you don't want to counter 14 hand mortars and a flying crow with Strelets.
Yeah. One thing that is worth mentioning is, right, it's about a 30 villager lead, I guess 25 now, but, you know, when that's 25 villagers to 50 villagers, right, that's double the economy, so they can produce double what you can. This is a 25 villager lead when n0eL's economy is 85 villagers, so that's like a 30% better economy. It's not quite so good.
Yeah, plus they're gathering from slower gathering.
Yeah.
So
the other argument you can make is if you actually look, n0eL has 220 out of 220 population. So he's actually making use of the extra population that his smaller economy provides. Lion's Den, even if he got full population, he's always going to have a smaller economy than n0eL is, or he's always going to have a smaller military, and that can make it actually very difficult for him to hold this off.
Alright, so now we start to see some musketeers coming out, guard musketeers and veteran Preakniks.
It's an interesting change, right? You have to wonder, like, how do you actually deal with the Black Rider and Mortar Arquebusier disciple composition? What units do you make? He's making this Culverin, but that's actually not going to do well because the hand mortars just kill it, or the Black Riders in this case. He's not going to be able to take the flank throw down.
Even the Black Riders with these Manchu, like, they do so well against any cav that Lionston can make, and then arguably the Flying Crow and the hand mortars counter every infantry he can make as well.
Right. He is trying to do a little bit. He tried to take down that Flying Crow, but it didn't quite work. He sent a few opportunities away to it, but it looks like n0eL is pushing through, and I don't think that Lionston really has what he needs to stop this. You can see he doesn't actually have any resources, so that economy isn't working quite so well for him. And he's out of fish, so he's not really going to have enough food ever to be able to support what he needs to do right now.
Exactly, and now we're going to see n0eL's economy start to catch back up. It doesn't
even need to.
Yeah, it doesn't need to.
He's always able to stay max top, and he has a good enough economy to be able to stay that way. So He's just going to have a bigger army the entire time. Like, I mean, you see right now, it's 120 military unit population to 20 a minute ago, now 38.
Yeah, and all these settlers are starting to die. Kind of a bad placement there. That mill has nowhere to run the settlers away from. The factory is out of position as well. Like, they're not covered by any building fire.
Well, at the same time, you could say it's out of position, but I would say there's no position to place it. He had so little building space available to him.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. He has actually shipped these 2 heavy cannons, and that's sort of his last goal at stopping this, but I think the disciples are going to take it down without a problem.
And if the disciples don't, the Iron Flail will.
Troll Null Soup.
Oh,
GG.
2 OP.
Oh, it's OP.
He just forgot the third O.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
That was interesting.
game number 2 in the best of 5 series between Lanston and n0eL goes to n0eL. I don't think that was what we thought was going to happen.
Not at all. Trying to wall up that sort of plateau that he's on.
For sure.
I think it's a little bit too far to do. But I think that there is reasonable opportunity to turn on this map, and that's something that Japan loves to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the third game in the best of 5 series between n0eL and Lions Den in the Invitational Tournament for Age of Empires Insight. Today, casting alongside me is Dualcrad, and we in the north of the map we have Lions Den playing as the color purple with the civilization Japan, and in the south we have n0eL in the color green playing as the British. Dualcrad, how do you feel about this matchup and about these players using these civilizations?
I believe Lions Den is very experienced with Japan, so I would say it's his main civ. So he's definitely going to be pretty happy about this. That being said, British are a tough matchup for Japan, I think. The British tends to do some sort of early aggression with pikemen, and then follows that up with longwomen, and then later follows that up with hussar. And each of those is something that comes out just a little bit too early for Japan to be actually able to deal with. Japan, in response, tends to do pretty much the same thing. They start Yumi, they make a bunch of walls, and then they try to switch to Nagi, but they find that their Yumi came out just a little bit too late, and then Nagi came out just a little bit too late, and everything just isn't quite there with them.
Yeah, for sure. Taking a look at the treasures right now, there's a few really good treasures that honestly are good for both civilizations, because the treasures that both these civilizations are looking for are wood treasures.
Exactly, yeah. And both players did actually move to that left side of the map where the treasures tend to be. This line on this left side of the map is where a lot of these good treasures spawn. And I think n0eL has actually gotten a good treasure to start, that 100 food treasure. I think we're going to see a contention coming out around this 90 wood treasure, which is probably the best treasure right now available to the players.
Yeah, arguably the only treasure that's better than that is the settler hiding over here.
Oh yeah, that's true actually. That is a strong treasure, but the issue is that it's just a little bit too hard to take.
And it doesn't pay off quite as immediately, and for the British player, getting 90 wood could mean getting a manor, which means getting a settler.
Yeah, that's also true. So Lions Den is inquiring about the lack of a water spawn point. Yeah, that actually is a feature of this map that you can't actually ship units onto the water. And that can make going water on this map a little difficult. Add to that the fact that the water is far away. There's not really an opportunity to use the water to provide offshore support to your stuff. Yeah. Complaining about to Durokan. I actually don't know who made this map in particular. I guess it is Durokan. I tend to assume that Ricky Ipu makes all the maps, but obviously that can't be true.
Well, whoever made it also likes having crocodiles, or rather alligators, that don't guard anything.
And there was a treasure contention, and actually n0eL did get the 90 wood, so he's going to be very happy about that. n0eL famously left the game after losing a treasure contention, so I think it's good to see that he actually got this one this time.
Perhaps it means the game will last longer than, 2 minutes. But yeah, what we're going to see each civilization do is pretty pretty much to be expected. We're going to see Shrine moving from Lion's Den, and we're going to see standard British play from n0eL. If we see anything outside the norm, I'll be surprised. Well, actually, I won't be surprised based off the last game.
Yeah, Lion's Den hasn't picked a deck yet. Can you actually confirm that for me? Oh no, he has. Okay. So yeah, both players are going with land decks. Actually, n0eL does have the Schooners card. So
that could pay off.
Yeah, okay.
There's a decent amount of fish on here, and then you also have the whales that will last forever.
Yeah. Well, there's only 4 whales, which is a little bit low for a water map. So it's definitely not a map that you want to go full water on. Maybe with specific civs, you can make it work, but it's going to be, somewhat of a non-standard build if you do so.
For sure.
I think n0eL is going to be going for a pretty standard aggressive play. In this matchup, British actually tends to be the aggressor, which is a little bit different from their normal game. They like to be pushing down a lot of Japanese shrines. They like to be pushing into the Japanese base. The reason being that Japan actually does outscale the British, but they're so slow that British can actually tend to do a lot of damage early on.
Yeah, in the end they outscale, but it takes them a little bit of time to get that momentum.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, both players doing their pretty standard first cards. In this case, Lanston did the Heavenly Kami card, so he's going to be going for pretty much a full shrine boom early on. And he did start with the Portuguese consulate. On the other hand, I forgot to train the bills. On the other hand, n0eL, I think, we do see those 2 forward villagers. I think he's going to be putting up a barracks pretty soon as he ages up, basically. And yeah, he does have enough wood to do so.
I should failed to check. Was this a 200 wood start or a 300 wood start for Britain?
It was 200.
Okay.
200. So n0eL has aged up, and yeah, we can see he's put down the barracks right now. Maybe even that's a little bit far back than he'd want. If you put a barracks down here, he'd be going very aggressively. But that is something that you can definitely do against Japan.
For sure. And then it also has kind of another benefit to it also. If you put it right there, then for any other units to perhaps go raid or anything, we'll have to go very far out of their way to these tunnels over here and over here.
Yeah. Actually, a very kind of cute outpost placement by n0eL here. He is putting it right here, which is going to give him a lot of vision over this ramp right here, as well as just basically this entire side of the map. So I'm really liking this outpost placement, even though it's maybe a little bit non-traditional.
Yeah, in this case, it actually seems like it might pay off, because line of sight is a very, very valuable asset to have.
You actually cut out there for me.
Oh, I was saying that line of sight's a very, very valuable asset to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is starting with pikemen, which is the standard thing that you want to be doing, and building up another barracks. So I think that n0eL in this game is going to be doing pretty much the standard play, and hopefully Gibson is well prepared against this.
For sure, it's the right thing to do. Start pikes, start taking out shrines, mix in some longbowmen, and just you have slightly better units, I think, and the longbowmen, that is.
Exactly, yeah. Lansden is going to be making 1 barracks and a market, and actually making 2 barracks. So he's responding in pretty much the standard way. The idea is, you accept that you lose a few shrines, but losing these shrines buys you some time. And that lets you build up a little bit of a good Yumi mass, and then hopefully have either the Nagi or the Ashigaru available to stop the Hussar transition. And then you just hope that you can outscale.
Yeah, for sure. Just do enough damage and, or hold, just, as a British player, I think if you just do enough damage, take out enough shrines, then you'll be in a good position to switch to the Hussar and win the game from there. But if Lanston can hold off, and he can keep the shrines up, keep his shrine pop above about 150 or so, his economy will be pretty even, and then he'll start to outscale and he'll be able to just mass.
Pretty much, yeah. The advantage that Lanston has is that his Yumi archers are going to be better than the longbowmen, especially after a few cards and a daimyo. And so he can rely on having the advantage in the light infantry or the ranged infantry. The issue is, and in fact, he has the advantage in the Naginata, which are very, very strong against infantry. The issue is mostly in the speed at which all of this happens. The British player gets all of this a lot faster than the Japanese player does. And so if n0eL is able to make use of his timing well, which he's currently doing that with all the pikemen, then it's going to be difficult for Lionsden to come into this game.
Yeah. Basically, the British player has the opportunity to set the tempo here, and if he takes advantage of that opportunity, he can win the game.
And yeah, he has actually sent the 700, 600 wood cards, and now coming out with the 700 coin, and you can see he has the staple already up. This is the very standard play. I think Callan actually does this a lot, where you do 700, 600, 700, and you use the 700 gold to basically make a bunch of Hussar. And it catches the Japanese player often by surprise. They're often not going to have enough units to deal with this cav switch, and I think in this case we're actually going to see Lionsden may not have enough units to deal with the cav switch. He actually sent the best arrows out, and he has not actually made any Ashigaru or any Clubmen or any Naginata to deal with any Hussar coming out.
I like that he put his pikemen into cover mode.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons, like you said, that the cav switch could be so powerful, he actually took advantage of that, and he put his table backwards a little bit, perhaps so Lionsden wouldn't see it and wouldn't expect it so soon.
I think he did come out with these two cavalry that we see right here, and I think that Lionsden did see it, and I think it was certainly not ideal to only get two cav out in the top. He actually was housed, so I think that caused the issue.
Yeah, and we do see Ashy. I don't know if that's...
I think... I do think that Lionsden actually saw the Hussar come out, and he started to make Ashy in response. And this can be okay. The issue with Ashy is that they're not a great unit on their own. Especially without cards, and the Ashy, they kind of die to longbowmen really, really easily, and so it's sometimes better to just mirror their longbowmen Hussar with Yumi Nagi and hope that since your units are better that you win. Trying to do this Ashy Yumi combination is a little bit difficult to make work, but it's certainly not unwinnable.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more difficult to macro too, I think.
Oh yeah, because, well, yeah, it does generally require that you switch between having your shrines on food or wood in order to actually be able to support making batches of Ashy versus making batches of Yumi.
Doing a fantastic job up there.
Oh yeah, he's actually continuing to raid down a lot of shrines, and I think Lionsden is definitely feeling a lot of pressure right now, yeah. Even having a bunch of pikemen over there, so... We're seeing that Lionsden has no shrines out on the map outside of basically his base, his plateau, and right here. And these shrines are going to be going down pretty soon too. So n0eL is definitely doing a great job right now with taking down the shrines, keeping them in check.
Yeah, absolutely. He's in a fantastic spot.
Yeah, you can see Lionsden's response is to be making these shrines in base, which doesn't let him get the maximum use out of them.
It is better than not having them at all, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we actually see a lot of Hussar coming out of n0eL, and that's probably what he wants to be doing, but a little bit light on the longbowmen. I think he does want to have a few more longbowmen than that to be able to deal with the Yumi mass that's building up.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
20 at Ashy.
Yeah. Lionsden is making just a ton of Ashy now. And in some sense, that actually means that n0eL does want to have more longbowmen. He actually did make a bunch just now, so we have a much better longbowmen mass, but I'd even like to see maybe another 10 or 20 popped onto that.
I think this is fairly even. I think it's going to come down to who has better micro. And
yeah, that's true.
Of these two players, who do you think that is?
I give it to n0eL, undoubtedly. I think Gibson's almost famous for his lack of micro.
Just right-click and let it happen.
Yeah, you can watch a stream and you see he doesn't really do a lot of unit control. So I think I'd give the edge to n0eL here, but we do see the Hussar came in, but they're not at the best angle. Lionsden actually had the concave here, or not the concave, but he had the choke point, which he wanted because all of his units are ranged and all of n0eL's units, or at least a lot of them, are melee. So I think that favors n0eL a little bit.
I do like the position that the longbowmen are in.
Yeah, that's actually true. They do have this cliff, which means that they actually cannot die to the one Nagi that came out. One Nagi, honestly, I say that as if it's useless, but one Nagi can actually do a lot of damage if it's not focused.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this case, yeah, the battle didn't actually go too much in either player's favor. And in some sense, that's actually good for Lionsden.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Yeah, I mean, right. If you're playing this game and you lose your army, if you're Lion's Den, that is, and you lose your army, you lose the game. If you destroy his army, you don't win the game, but you're not you're in a pretty good position. But if you sort of reset the armies, you're also in a pretty good position. The idea is that you're outscaling, so anytime you're not actively dying, you're happy. Even if you don't win a battle, you're gaining an advantage.
Exactly. You know that you have the long-term better economy, and as long as you can keep his army small enough that it cannot actually take out, your entire army and your infrastructure, you can just continue to trade all day until you get to the point where you outscale, and then can outmass.
I think another thing that Lion's Den is happy about is that when the armies are reset to small sizes, you're a little bit safer. So I think a pretty common thing that a lot of players experience, and certainly I experience, is that when the armies get big, if you screw up the fight, you just lose the game immediately. Like, you have even armies and then you just get completely rolled in a fight, and then you lose the game. And when the armies are small, that doesn't really happen. And if you don't have great micro, like me, it's very easy to just have one of those fights where you just get completely wrecked. And so with Lion's Den, who doesn't also have great micro, not having that happen is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. This is interesting. He does have a lot of Nagi right now, and there's no real amounts of anti-cav here. We have a handful of muskets and then Hussar.
Mm-hmm. There were a few muskets, and I think he's okay. He did have a pretty good position with these two barracks in this manor house, which meant that the Nagi couldn't quite get in. Longwomen can focus down Nagi and kind of kill them all before they can really close the distance, especially with a few musketeers. But as this Nagi size increases, it's going to be more and more difficult for that to happen.
Yeah.
I do think that Lion's Den has done well to avoid the situation where he's in a lot of danger. He sort of has gotten to the point where it's not Japan's weak point anymore, and now it's the time where Japan is starting to outscale.
Exactly, and this is where n0eL needs to make something happen. And if he fails to do so, then Lion's Den will just outscale, and he's gonna, like, right now the masses are equal, and in about 2 minutes, it's gonna be Lion's Den's favor.
Exactly, yeah. Now, we should look at a little bit at the hunts on the map. There are a few hunts still left, mostly at half map, and in some sense it's good for both players for these hunts to be going down, and bad for both players. Later on in the game, Lion's Den, I get these players confused a lot for some reason. Lion's Den's not going to be able to shrine these hunts up, and so his economy is never going to grow past a certain point. Meanwhile, British, of course, they love to have hunts, and so not having these hunts, once they run out, is going to be bad for him.
Oh, but to counter this, we do, and I failed to mention this actually, schooners came from n0eL, and he has duck, and he's making them right now. And so I guess he prepared for this eventuality that the hunts would run low, and he's going to go ahead and take the water, which is uncontested. This isn't necessarily bad.
I think that's actually a really smart decision out of him, and it's something that I think it's really easy to forget. A lot of players, I think, if they don't remember to take the water at the beginning of the game, they just never take it. So I'm really liking this mixing in of water as the game proceeds, rather than just immediately starting and going 4-dock schooner boom at the beginning. We do have a fight going down here, though, and this could actually go very poorly for n0eL if it's not careful.
Yeah, he lost a few of his longwomen there from the Nagi.
Yeah, and his Hussars have come in, but the musketeers are in a good position right now, and I think a lot of the Nagi are going to die. After that, it's going to be mostly longwomen against Ashiyumi, that's fine, but he does have a much smaller army right now.
Yeah, he's starting to back off, try to get away from this.
But okay, he's not in a terrible position. Well, okay, those 5 Nagi could do it. What happens is, if he can save the longwomen mass, which he generally did, he's not going to lose, as long as he can maintain those longwomen. And so he had to save the longwomen in some way from that Nagi. And by killing all those Nagi, he's not necessarily going to lose the game immediately.
I've really liked that from n0eL. I don't know if you noticed that or not. He had his longwoman just kind of skirt the edge of that stable, which caused some pathing issues for the Nagi, and doing so saved him all those longwomen.
Mm-hmm. You can actually, he was still going to go for those Nagi. That's so important for him to do. If he has a bunch of longwomen and his opponent has 5 Nagi, he just loses the game. So he has to do whatever he can to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, he is actually being pushed back a lot because of this huge infantry mass coming out of Lion's Den, and I think he may be calling GG pretty soon.
Yeah, I would expect the same. I mean, he has the economic potential now that he's starting to take the water, but he just doesn't have the mass right now to push this back and take advantage of that potential that might be there.
Yeah, it hasn't really kicked in yet, and he doesn't have enough villagers on food to actually be able to make more units. We saw last, or 1 or 2 matches ago, he only got 1 musket out of each barracks, and that's obviously not what he wants to be doing right now. Trying to figure out where, he has a lot of vital villagers actually right here, and that's probably causing him to not really have the units that he needs right now.
Exactly, and he's in a situation where he needs to focus on the units that are attacking him, and it makes it a little bit harder for him to retask all those settlers.
Exactly, yeah. And actually, we could see a couple of Nagi raids coming out. He's remaking the barracks down here due to losing these barracks. I think, I wouldn't necessarily call it immediately for Lion's Den just yet, but he's in a very comfortable position right now.
And he's seen these docks, and so we might actually see him perhaps place a castle on the shore.
That could be exactly what he needs, yeah. There is potential to sort of take the water and just play really defensively for the rest of the game and try to sneak out the win that way. But he is definitely in a lot of pain right now. The Ashy Mass is so huge, and it can just kind of run into the base and destroy everything.
Yeah, there's just so much siege potential there between the Nagi and the Ashy. He's got some clubs coming in as well.
Yeah. n0eL has, however, made 4 docks, and he's going to be
4 docks?
Yes, 4
wow!
Docks. He's going to be going full on the water, so I think if he had maybe a couple more minutes before the battle happened, this would be a little bit of a different game. But as it stands, he still has to, we can say, yeah, he's got 4 docks, he's making a lot of stuff, but he also has to deal with 40 Ashy.
We see Lion's Den aging up. I suppose that's the right thing to do. I mean, you have the edge right here. You can safely lose all of these units and still be in a good spot, so...
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, this town center is going to be going down, and... what's he saying?
I'm not sure what he's saying that to, except for perhaps this.
I don't know.
Like...
I think he might have just noticed that n0eL was taking the water, or something like that. Yeah, we do see this catamaran coming out, so he is going to notice that n0eL has the water. But honestly, I'm not sure he necessarily needs to care.
No, he doesn't. He's taken out his town center. His entire economy is essentially focused on the water and this little pile of settlers that's just kind of sitting there doing nothing. This is essentially n0eL's last-ditch effort right here. The line is very thin, and it rests upon these musketeers.
Exactly, yeah. He's retasking these villagers, but the difficulty is that they can't really do much. They can only get him wood, and he doesn't need wood. Musketeers. So he can really only get food from his boats, and his boats are actually taking a lot of damage right now too. He's making a caravel to stop this, but yeah, he's not in a good position by now.
No, I mean, honestly, all Lion's Den needs to do is right-click on these musketeers.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He maybe has some potential with this caravel. You can use the caravel in tandem with tiers to actually hold off, but that's going to restrict him to basically this part of the map, and he's not going to really be able to move out from it.
We see Lion's Den aging up again. If anything, that's just going to tilt n0eL further. I mean,
yeah,
you're already fighting an age behind. 2 ages behind is not something that you want to be doing.
Not at all.
And he's getting the veteran upgrades for his Ashy right now.
Now, n0eL wants to be doing something about these catamaran, but he cannot. He only has 1 caravel, which probably couldn't deal with all these units. And the other issue is that this caravel has to be stationed right here in order to make him not lose the game. But there is actually this fight going down in the middle right here. I think that, well, n0eL did better than I expected, but I think he's not going to do enough.
I mean, he held it off, right? But now Lionson has access to Age 4 shipments, and just look at what he has there. 16 Yumi,
Right.
14 Ashi, Flaming Arrows, and Daimyo. Like,
Yeah, Japanese Age 4
or Shogun,
shipments
that
are
is.
quite strong. And yeah, the Catamaran mass is getting very threatening too. It's going to be able to take down the Caravel like that. Probably quite a few of the docks, and n0eL doesn't really have any offshore or stuff on the shore to be able to stop those.
Yeah, it'll even push these settlers off this mine, which only has 300 gold left.
The one thing that n0eL does have going for him is that he does have pretty much an equal economy, so he can at least be happy about that. Now, can he use those villagers? No, but at least he has about as many.
Yeah, the timeline at least won't look too bad.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, what we're seeing up here is it looks like he's just going to continue to gather with his fishing boats, even though they're being shot at, and that makes sense, because if he just makes them run away, he won't be gathering at all, and he'll end up losing them in the end anyway, so you might as well just let them die a noble death gathering fish from the sea.
Yeah, so I said didn't want to see Indonesia because I didn't want to see another 30-minute game, but we're rapidly approaching that.
4 Flaming Arrows, this is going to be over pretty fast, I would say.
Yeah, but then again, we thought it was over 10 minutes ago, or maybe 5 minutes ago, and
That's fair.
n0eL is been hanging on, so questionably hanging on.
Oh, 4 more though.
Another 4 flaming arrow pop.
And then you have Honored Ashiguru, which that alone is going to take out Age 2 muskets.
Exactly, yeah. n0eL's rebuilt his town center, but all of his economy is stationed right here, and he has nothing that's available to actually deal with these units.
Yeah.
And really, there's not really any good way for him to deal with the units. He would need some sort of longbow cavalry mass, and he just has none of those units, and no real way to actually begin making those units either. Oh, coming in with the village. Coming in with the villagers, he's going to try to take down the flaming arrows with the villager micro.
I've seen this done. I mean, it's viable.
It works, it just doesn't necessarily work against 8 flaming arrows, I don't think. He's going to get 1, I think. I'm not so sure. It looks like 2, maybe 3, but I think that's going to cost him pretty much his entire economy. I'm calling GG.
And so game number 2 in the best of 5 series, sorry, game number 3 that is, goes to Lionston, bringing the score to 2 versus 1. That was a pretty interesting game. I did like the dock switch there. I just think that perhaps it was a bit too late.
Just a little bit, yeah. I think if that happened maybe a minute earlier, or if Lionston attacked a minute later, we would have seen that scale much better, and he would have been able to continue to have the better economy than Japan, which is really what you need as British. You know that your units aren't as good, and so
Yeah.
you need to continuously maintain an economic lead to have a better mass.
If you take a look at the resource gathered line, you kind of see exactly what we were saying earlier. The British has the slight advantage, but once Japan gains momentum, they just take them out in the late game economy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to game number 4 in the best of 5 series between n0eL and Lionsden. This is, of course, part of the Age of Empires 3 Insight Invitational Tournament, which is, of course, between 16 players, and these 2 are the first ones to get their games going, and we're getting down to the bitter end, and we're going to see who does pull ahead. Right now it is Lionsden win the lead 2-1, and co-casting alongside me today is n0eL. n0eL, how do you feel about these players and the civilizations they have chosen for this map?
n0eL's definitely a Japanese player, and I think that he is very comfortable with the civilization. Lionsden, I don't believe, actually plays Spanish much, but they're a pretty easy civilization to pick up. They're not too difficult to do their most common strat with, which is do a fast fortress. I think that what we'll see out of Lionsden is a fast fortress. He's going to go into Fortress Age, right-click a bunch of unit shipments, and then hopefully win from that. n0eL, I think, is going to go for some sort of fast fortress too. to counter that. I think Japan often likes to follow the age up from another player. They're an inherently reactive civ because they're so slow, and it's never ideal to be fighting an age down. So I think that he's going to be trying to do some sort of fast fortress as well.
For sure, I could see that coming out of him. Of course, we do see n0eL spawning in the kind of northeast of the map in the color green, playing as the Japanese, as aforementioned, and in the southwest we have Lionsden playing as Spain in the color purple. And I'm actually a big fan of this map. I love the tiered approach to it, and it actually seems to feel games that can go very back and forth, and I'd be excited to see that here today.
Okay. Now this map is pretty small, or at least it's small with respect to the rush distance between the players. You can see that they're not very far apart in their spawns. There's a little bit of this cliff here that mitigates that, but even with that, it's not going to be very far to go to the opponent's base.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good for Spanish in this case. Japan would like it to be a much bigger map, but what Japan does have is this very wide map. That means that they can shrine up pretty much the entire map, and it's very expensive for Spanish to actually push out and kill some of these shrines.
For sure, but on the flip side, something that goes into the Spain civilization, the Spanish player, is that this enormous trade route that he can take, which is a bit more common and a bit more useful for Spain to utilize, because of course they are to get their shipments faster, and adding on extra XP to that just really fuels that civ bonus.
Yeah, the trading posts with Spanish are very good to be taking. Unfortunately, Lionsden doesn't have the advanced trading post card in his deck, so I don't think we're going to see a large trade route coming out of him. I think he might take this one trading post and maybe not go beyond that. And so maybe n0eL doesn't have to be too concerned, especially because he won't see the advanced trading post card in his deck. It is possible that n0eL will try to contest the trade route, which I wouldn't mind seeing him do.
Yeah, for sure, and he definitely has the potential there. He has some great units with a good amount of siege on them. So
yeah, we do have a treasure contention going down here for 80 food, so this is not a big deal, but it would be nice for both players to have it. No, n0eL is going to be taking it. And this is good. You can see he's actually using this Japanese monks, teleporting them back. So he's basically getting these 80 food and not really losing out on it. Or not really losing out on anything. He can just run away from the Spanish explorer now.
Yeah, and the Spanish player is aging up first with the governor. So pretty standard.
Yeah. Meanwhile, n0eL is actually doing something that is not standard. Something I actually unfortunately missed. He's not making a consulate, and he's shipping 300 wood first. So
that's actually a build order I've not seen. Yeah,
this is something that it's not unviable, but it isn't standard. It's not your standard shrine room sort of thing that Japan likes to do. I think that he's going to be doing some sort of consulate rush. That's my best guess. But it's something that I haven't seen very often, and I haven't really used it since 2010, really. So I'm curious to see what he does right now.
Yeah, for sure. I do like seeing old strats kind of resurrected and used again amongst the new meta, and they can actually be effective because of it.
Post, yeah. So I'm seeing. I do know that he actually was doing something similar against me on a Japan mirror. The game unfortunately didn't play out because he didn't get that 100 food treasure. And in this case, he is going for a little bit more shrines than before. Last game he was doing a 10-10 or something similar. In this game he's doing something else. Oh, and yeah, building the consulate. So yeah, I think we are seeing a consulate rush coming out. But
it's very forward. I kind of like that.
Very forward, but unfortunately, I believe that Spanish war dog did see the villagers. So the fact that this is placed very far to the right, intended, of course, to hide it, is not going to pay off necessarily.
Yeah, and because of that, we do see this outpost being placed very, very close. Perhaps not because of it. Perhaps that was his intention all along. Although I have seen some Spain players place the outpost very forward and then age up and just send units from it.
Yeah, I believe that Lionsden, what he would have liked to do would be to put that outpost forward, but because he saw this aggression, he cannot do so. He's worried about basically losing the game before we can get up at the fortress age. And certainly otherwise, he would be able to put that outpost very far forward because Japan really wouldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, for sure. Something that's perhaps not game-breaking or game-changing, but worth mentioning is that n0eL did take the yak advantage, and so he's able to put those yaks onto the shrines that he has at home, kind of protecting them from the Spanish player perhaps making pikemen and running around.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true. And these acts are doing quite a bit of work. Actually, they are worth quite a bit. You can see that shrine with 3 axes providing a 0.61, not 0.61 coin, which is about a tenth of a resource per second more than what you'd get for just normal animals. So definitely coming very useful. And now he has actually queued up 5 clubmen and has popped them out. So I think what I believe he's trying to do is just kill Lion's Den right away.
The Lion's Den, he and then the next card that actually came from n0eL was 5 Ashy. So he's got this early military unit population. But Lion's Den sent Colonial Militia, and he has the outpost and town center. So I don't think that there's enough siege in there for n0eL to actually take it out if he was to push now.
I think you're right. Yeah, and that means that he's going to be in a difficult position, right? He needs to do something, because if he's going all in like this and he doesn't kill Lion's Den or do a lot of damage, then Lion's Den just takes a bunch of unit shipments and goes and wins. So as it stands, if he doesn't make something work, he doesn't necessarily need to kill Lion's Den. He just needs to do something useful with all of these units. Otherwise, he's just going to lose to a bunch of units.
Yeah, and I see 2 approaches, really Spain versus any civ, is that either the civ will try to push early and stop the fast fortress from happening, or they'll play defensive and just try to survive the unit shipments, because once Spain has exhausted their unit shipments, they don't really have a whole lot to write home about. They have that really strong early fortress pressure, and then it kind of dies down.
Exactly, yeah. And in this case, n0eL is going for the former option, but I'm not 100% sure about it.
I honestly don't think it's going to work.
Mess, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a good amount of units, and perhaps if he hadn't sent Colonial Militia, then perhaps it could work. But Colonial Militia, if I do recall correctly, not only does it give you the Minutemen call, but also increases your town center fire. And so...
Yeah, he's making use of that town center fire right now. And that's what he needs, but Lion's Den has actually aged up. So yeah, this is a difficult position for n0eL. What I think he's going to try to do is to siege down all the houses and make it difficult for Lion's Den to actually send more shipments. You can see he only has 20 population right now, so he's going to send 1 shipment that he just sent, probably. And then he's not going to be able to send anything else. I believe he does have shipments sent, although he did send 4 cards already, so he might not.
Something to comment on, and while it's not necessarily like a big mistake or anything, but it definitely can make a difference, is that you might have noticed whenever n0eL had pushed into his base, Lion's Den did not split his town center fire. He would shoot twice at these units, which would of course kill them, but it would have been better if he had split up 1 shot per unit, lowering them down very low for his pikemen and his dogs to then take out. It can make a difference. It's not necessarily game-changing, 1 unit for 1 unit, but whenever you damage 10 units, it's definitely going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Something that a lot of players don't do, because sometimes it is better to just kill the units, especially if it's a high-value unit like an Abyss gun. But in this case, it would be better to split that fire to make sure that you're getting the maximum DPS out. So 5 Lancers coming out, and I don't think that's actually going to be enough, because you can see these Ashigaru just focusing them down where they can connect. So n0eL's not in as bad a position right here as I thought, right? He killed 2 Lancers, and a 3rd one is down almost to no health.
Yeah, for
effectively
sure.
for free. And even these skirmishers aren't going to be able to do enough against Ashy.
Perhaps 2 cannons would have been a better choice instead of four Lancers. And perhaps making a stable in transition to then train Lancers from.
Yeah. The problem with the not sending the Lancers and sending the cannons instead is that there's so many Ashy that the Ashy would just walk up and kill the cannons without any protection. But the issue is...
It's kind of a gamble.
It's
It's just a gamble you have to take,
Yeah. So Lion's Den does have a shipment ready, and he does have enough housing to do so.
Yeah, and he did send it. We'll see what it is.
Yeah. I'm going to guess it's the cannons, but...
I think that would be the logical choice.
Yeah. We have to think, like, what exactly should he be doing right now? That is to say, Lion's Den, he's really low on wood. He doesn't have enough of barracks. And none of the units that he can ship outside of the cannons really does well against Ashy. Lancers do okay, but they're not ideal, and they don't do too well against the Kansa Yamabushi. And so it is a little bit difficult for Lion's Den to really make the units he needs to deal with n0eL's Ashy mess.
In my opinion, what he could probably do, to at least buy him some more time, would just be wall off these 2 little areas, which is going to cause n0eL to have to either siege them down or walk around, which would buy him more time and just improve his defense, because he still has colonial militia that he can call. He has the town center and he has the outpost, and he has a decent army and a shipment on the way. He sent 1,000 wood, so he's going to use it to get down more infrastructure.
That's sort of a shipment that he needed to send, not one that he wanted to send. It is needed so that he can actually be able to send other shipments, be able to make more skirmishers, and be able to really protect the cannons that he really wants to be sending. He's going to make a market too. He's behind economically and doesn't really have the infrastructure he needs to be able to do anything. And so, well, he would have wanted to send a different card. I think the 1,000 wood was the card that he really had to be doing there.
Yeah, and there's a plus side though to sending wood instead of something else that could perhaps give you units or another or sending a unit shipment, is that building all these buildings is going to give you XP, and so you're going to get to your next shipment a little bit faster.
That's true. Yeah, n0eL actually has made a daimyo and made 5 Nagi, and that's actually great because the anti-cav out for Lion's Den is basically non-existent outside of those pikemen, which are going to die so quickly to the Ashi. This is putting Lion's Den in a difficult position where he needs to be able to deal with the Ashi mass, but he also needs to be able to deal with any amount of Nagi, and he can't really do that simultaneously.
Yeah, and while we touched on what Lion's Den could do, what n0eL really has to do here is just shrine the entire map and wait.
That's true, yeah. He is in a good position in that he doesn't have to kill Lion's Den. He just has to survive, and he's in a sense doing even better than that. He is on the verge of killing Lion's Den.
Yeah.
Well, the skirm mass is getting big, so he's probably going to have to pull back a little bit now, but
just make 5 more Nagi, really. I mean,
yeah, he doesn't have to worry too much about getting outscaled, because he's the one who's going to be doing the outscaling.
Yeah.
And he does have a much better economy. It's 11 villagers right now, better, and it can only grow, really.
Yeah, and because he's the one pushing, look at the units that Lion's Den is making. He's making skirmishers. So even if he lost these units, I mean, are you going to push with skirmishers and siege stuff down? Not typically. You're going to wait until you get cannons, so you're going to wait until you can get some units that have better siege.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. And he actually is aging up. That's good, too. So, yeah, it's worth talking a little bit about the different ways that compositions affect the game. That is to say, n0eL's unit composition is Ashi and Nagi, which means that he has pushing potential and he can siege down buildings. Whereas Lion's Den's composition is skirmisher heavy and has a lot of lancers, or a couple of Radaderos now, but it's sort of centered around the skirmisher unit. What that means is that he can't really push and he can't really force a good fight. Whereas n0eL, on the other hand, he can always sort of get a Nagi catch and force fights on his terms.
Yeah.
So he does have a military advantage in that sense, even if he doesn't necessarily have a better composition to win a direct fight.
And there's a question actually in the Twitch right now if the Ashigiru have a better melee attack than the Lancers. The Lancers obviously have a bigger attack, but cost effectively, I would have to say that, in my opinion, the Ashi do well against Lancers.
Yeah, let me think. I believe Ashi do beat the Lancers cost effectively, but it's not the best sort of interaction of that form. Ashi, I think, are noticeably weak to cavalry, and Lancers are noticeably strong against infantry. So even if it is a cost-effective trade in favor of the Ashi, it's not the best one. But in this case, the Lancer count is so small that it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, and actually, the problem with that is, like you said, it's cost-effective, but the Lancers do really good. And so in small numbers, while you're going to lose economically, you're going to take out their entire Ashi mass, and then you're going to gain the momentum in the game. And that's more valuable than maybe 200 resources that you didn't trade effectively. Ideally, the momentum is worth more than that.
That's actually a good point. In this case, the Ashi mass is so big that it's not really as important. Something that you don't really need to worry about as much. And I think, the army has gotten pretty good for Lion's Den. He does have a lot of Radaderos, so he's not in danger of sort of dying to a bunch of Nagi. But he does have to be a little bit careful, because this army, again, is not something that can retreat easily. If all of the Radaderos die, then the Nagi catch and kill everything.
Okay, so n0eL sends Flaming Arrows. How do you feel about that card in this circumstance?
Very strong in this case, yeah, because this army is so infantry heavy, and the Falconets aren't out yet, or they just came out, I saw. And Lion's Den does have to be careful about those. And they're actually not in yet, so these Flaming Arrows are going to do a lot of damage before Lion's Den can do anything about it.
Now, Falconets do better against flaming arrows, though, like unit for unit. So if you can get the first shot off, you can just take those flaming arrows out, and then leverage the Falconets against his infantry.
Yeah, the issue was, though, that the flaming arrows were in the battle, and the Falconets were not. So I think that, well, n0eL did surprisingly poorly in this fight, I would say, for what he had, but I think he didn't do well. So what I want to say is, right, he didn't win that fight. n0eL did not. But he did reset the armies again. And that means that it's a survival thing. We saw this last game where if Japan is able to reset the armies, even if they don't win the battle, they come out ahead because they just don't die. And
Exactly.
not dying is a win for Japan.
Exactly.
So in this case, n0eL stopped the push. This army is better for Lionsden, but it's not enough to push in. So n0eL's fine.
And about 15 seconds ago, Lionsden had nothing that could counter cavalry, and so obviously he's not going to push to n0eL's base with falconets and skirmishers, because all that n0eL would have to do is pop out 5 Naji, and they would just wreck it all.
Exactly, yeah. So this army is, again, very unstable again. Yes, he sent 5 Naginata. This army is one of those things that just dies through a 5 Nagi pop. And again, one of the things that n0eL has to win for him is that he doesn't have an army that dies to just something instantaneously, right? He can always retreat if he needs to, even if it costs him a building or so.
Is this a strategy I just don't know about? He has 1 falconet.
No.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that perhaps served a purpose or not.
No, that's the you wanted both falconets in range mode, but it takes too much work to actually put them into whatever mode you want. So because you're busy doing something else.
So what you're saying is the classic Gibson kind of move to make.
Yes. Yeah. Although, I'm guilty of doing the same thing. So okay, this is what I was mentioning, right? The barracks is going down, but n0eL's not unhappy about that. Obviously, he's unhappy about losing the barracks, but he's okay because he can always take the battle when he wants to. And now he has these big Nagi push coming in, taking out all these skirmishers, all these falconets, and I think he's going to win this battle and win the game.
Yeah, because even if Lionsden can do enough damage, like he'll lose the fight, but if he can do enough damage that n0eL can't push, like what we were talking about just a couple minutes ago, in the ends, n0eL came out on top, and his economy is starting to gain the lead, and so that's all he needs. And so
exactly, yeah, and calling GG.
So game number 4 in the best of 5 series goes to n0eL, and this is a very close series. These two players are very, very closely matched up in skill, and I'm curious to see how the 5th game is going to go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 5th game in the best of 5 series between Lionsden and n0eL in the first Age of Empires 3 Insight Invitational Tournament. This has been a very close series going back and forth between both players. They're very close in skill, and we are now going to see who is going to take this home, who's going to advance to the round of 8. Casting alongside me today is n0eL. n0eL, how do you feel about these two players and the civilizations they have chosen for this map?
So, n0eL is a China player. I think he's very happy playing China on this map, or just in general. So, this is sort of his main civilization and what he's known for. Lionsden, on the other hand, is not known for Ottomans, but it's probably a civ that he's happy to be playing because it's relatively easy to pick up, and it's a civilization that can steal a lot of games away from better players.
For sure. I think this was perhaps a self-preservation kind of pick kind of thing. Like, it's a good civ. You know that if you both play evenly, like at the same level, you'll probably win. And so that might be why he decided to choose this.
Exactly, yeah. I think what we're going to see is n0eL's going to do either a colonial or fortress play. I'm guessing he's going to go Chinese colonial, just because Lionsden's probably going to be doing is going for a colonial pressure, and it's going to be really difficult for n0eL to go fast fortress and not die. So I'm guessing that they're going to go for colonial warfare, and that honestly does favor Ottomans a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that this Ottoman deck that I'm looking at right now is a very standard deck, but it isn't necessarily a colonial deck. It isn't necessarily a fortress deck. He can really go for either one, and he can even play he doesn't have all the cards that I'd want to see for Age 4, but he could even go to Age 4 with this. So we could see a Fast Fortress, or we could see Colonial play. And then even those two different playstyles have different facets in and of themselves, which makes the Ottomans a very unpredictable civilization to play against. The most common thing to see is the double racks, make a bunch of Janissaries and right-click on the town center. But there's other options as well.
Absolutely. That's sort of what Ottoman decks can do extremely well, is that you can see a deck and you can't say for certain whether that's going to be a Fast Fortress deck or a Colonial play deck. And you often don't know really until they've already decided on one and have Janissaries in their base or are aging up which one it's going to be. So you can even to an extent do that, mixing in a Fast Industrial deck in the same, and which is going to get really difficult to find out what the player's doing. Yeah,
for sure. And we do see Lionston aging up first, which is pretty typical, considering the civilization he's chosen.
Yeah, and he is sending out these two villagers, so I think we are going to stay Colonial play for them.
And I guess now the next question is, are we going to see double racks? Are we going to see a stable? Are we going to see an artillery foundry? I would like to see some Abyss gun in this game.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're going to see barracks and stable, barracks artillery foundry. Artillery foundry Abyss guns, of course, are an extremely strong unit. Even on the patch where they are nerfed, I think that they're still a great unit.
For sure. It's the stronger of the two strategies, but it's a little bit more difficult to execute properly.
Right. Now, one thing that China can do that can really win them games a lot is to just take every unit shipment that's in their H2 deck and just send it off and try to kill the opponent. It's a strategy that actually people in my clan were semi-famous for using, is they would just not make any villagers and just click every shipment that they had in H2 and hope that they win. And I think it can work. It's in a sense, it's what you need to do to defend against an Ottoman rush.
That definitely sounds like a strategy that I would be good at implementing. Just don't train any villagers.
Yeah, so the strategy is you age up 17 villagers, standard China play, right? Then you make the War Academy, you send Jukunu, you send Tiang, you send Step Riders, and then you hope you win. You make Old Han the entire way through, yeah.
Of course.
So yeah, something that is very big coming out. The n0eL got the catch on the villagers, and he's going to take one of these villagers down, possibly two. These forward villagers are not going to be able to build their barracks.
That's actually really big. That does two things. Yeah. In fact, first, you're going to not be able to build your barracks, right? It's going to slow down your potential. But secondly, you're going to lose villagers, and the Ottomans already have a pretty slow economy, and slowing it down even further is the last thing that they want.
Exactly. Yeah, that is actually could even win the game if he's able to capitalize on that. This barracks has gone down later than he wanted to, and further back than he wanted to, and he got a villager for that.
Yeah, definitely, which is just going to slow everything down that he was planning, and that might have been the edge that n0eL needed to just slow down Ottoman enough to be able to challenge it properly.
Right, and we do see he is building this War Academy, so I believe we are seeing a Chinese colonial play, which I'm honestly excited to see. It's not something you see every day, or any day, really.
Well, neither are grenadiers and petards.
Right. Then actually catching this Explorer too is going to be pretty good for him, and I think he's going to get it. It may be a little bit close with these Janissaries coming in, but doesn't look like it.
He still did manage to get a lot of damage on it, though, and that's important because he cannot go gather any treasures, and he cannot build trade posts without risking losing. So he's basically rendered the Explorer kind of useless for the rest of the game. Well, maybe for the next 3 minutes or so, but
yeah. Now Lionston did make this artillery foundry, so we are going to see, I think, the fairly standard Jan Abyss coming out of him.
Yes,
and that is truly an extremely powerful way to play. Abyss guns on the patch do have a 3.5 attack rate as opposed to 3, which is standard, which means that in practice they're quite a bit weaker than normal, but they're still an extremely powerful unit that basically counters everything.
Yeah.
So I think that n0eL is, despite all the gains that he's made, he's going to still have a difficult time playing this game out.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of the Abyss gun, That nerf has a bigger effect when you have large masses, and each of those Abyss are going to have to get off maybe 5 to 10 shots, right? It's going to be slower in between. But in small skirmishes with good micro, they only have to get 1 or 2 shots off in the first place, and so it's kind of insignificant. It's a nerf that scales larger and larger the farther you go in a fight.
Mm-hmm. It does actually affect a little bit about how the game plays out, or how the Ottoman likes to have their fights. So, I think Ottomans generally like to have fights that are pretty close up. They like to get their Janissaries in right on top of the enemy units. They like to put their Abyss guns in a safe place, but able to get a lot of damage off. But they don't like to have those skirmishes that sort of have units dancing around, because they like to have decisive battles that win them the game right there. But with the Abyss guns, that changes, because you want to have the Abyss guns firing, and then you don't want their slower rate of fire to have an effect, so you want to pull back and wait for their fire to basically reload. So this puts their ideas a little bit at conflict with each other, I think.
And n0eL's going to lose his Summer Palace, which is a pretty big deal, honestly.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
He aged up with that for a reason, and now he's not going to be able to utilize it. And it actually served 2 purposes being there. It's such a large building that it kind of provides a measure of safety, and now the Abyss and Jans can just march into his base a lot faster.
Yeah, I did think that it was a little bit further forward than I would have liked. It was difficult to protect because of how far forward it was. I get why you wanted to do it, because it did provide a nice wall, but it was so difficult to protect where it was.
And now he's losing a village, and he's already popped to begin with. So essentially, he's going to have to fight with what he has and nothing more. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on him. And so far, Lion's Den, I mean, his build order has been very all-in, right? You know, you got 700 wood, 700 food, 700 coin, 600 coin, and all of those are extremely all-in. And once these are exhausted, if n0eL can survive, his economy can outdo him.
Exactly, yeah. Now, n0eL has sent the 7-step riders, and that has the opportunity to actually catch off these Abyss, but it may not be possible with all the Janissaries out. He has to be extremely careful with this, and he is actually sending both Minutemen, but I think that it's maybe a little bit early to do so, because he hasn't... Right, they're not going to get in time, but... the Abyss gun count is actually not probably what it needed to be.
Yeah, he could definitely use more. And this is really good, actually, from n0eL. I think he's going to manage to hold this off, which is all he has to do.
Right here. The Ottoman player is almost inherently all in. They have sort of one basket that they have to put all their eggs in one basket, and they just have to make sure that they can watch that basket. But in this case...
Exactly. And the basket he chose may not have been the basket he needed. And although he did do a good amount of damage to n0eL, I mean, he's still pop-locked, and he still is missing his Summer Palace.
Right.
If he can rebound from this, perhaps he can still win the game. But honestly, I think n0eL, he has the potential here. He can take this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One minor thing was that those irregulars were not in the fight for most of the game, or for most of the battle. That probably made n0eL not win the game immediately right there. Because if those regulars were in, I think the damage would have been so much higher. We would have killed a lot of those Janissaries too.
Alright, so Lion's Den has sent 3 Hussar, which could do some pretty good damage against these Chicanews if he can get them to connect with it, and he can focus down the anti-cav that he does have.
3 Hussar are a little bit difficult. They're sort of like just below what you need to be able to swing the game. Like 5 Hussar, right? A 5 Hussar pop can win you the game. 3 Hussar often not quite. Chickanee mass in this case is a little bit high.
You have to micro them very effectively, and like we've mentioned before, that might not necessarily be Lion's Den's strong suit.
Yeah, but the Abyss gun count is a lot higher than it was last time, or at least relative to the number of Janissaries out. n0eL's actually perhaps a little bit distracted because he has this army that's been sitting here and he hasn't been thinking through it. And having another 2-step riders would be extremely helpful for him.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to time this, just right. He doesn't want to go too early, because if he goes too early, he won't have quite enough, and Lion's Den will just kind of steamroll it, and then he can move in from there. On the flip side, if he goes too late, he's going to give Lion's Den the opportunity to take advantage of the 3 now trading posts that he does have, and he might even go up to age 3 and then just leverage his fortress agenda.
Yeah. In this case, the economy is not so bad for Lion's Den because he has those 3 trading posts. I think he is still able to hold off pretty well because of that trade line. His economy is pretty much even. This battle here is going, I would say, it's tough, right? Like, both players lost all their cavalry, and the JNA does beat Chukanu just purely because of the Abyss guns, but a lot of those Abyss guns did die. I think n0eL's smartly focusing them down really quickly before they can do a lot of damage.
But on the flip side, this composition of mostly Chukanu doesn't really have the siege it needs to really push into his base, just to push him back. And so Lions may have enough time to get more Abyss out.
The problem for n0eL is that he wants these cavalry to snare the units. He wants these committed battles, somewhat ironically against the Ottomans, but he wants these committed battles because the Abyss guns can't fire quickly enough. So what he needs to do is try to snare, but the fact is that his step riders and his disciples have such low HP that they often cannot really get good snare off.
Yeah, now that it's starting to get into about the mid-game, we're starting to notice Ottoman's inherent weakness in their economy. You know, his unit batches are starting to slow down, and China, they don't really experience that same slowdown. Okay, so stable, that's what I think he needs to be making right now. But his coin income is so slow.
I think, this is a bit awkward for both players. I think n0eL definitely wants to have that the artillery foundry siege down. It's an expensive building. It's not one that you can easily replace. And the Abyss guns are sort of what the composition centers around. They do so much damage. The Janissaries, even though there are more Janissaries, they're sort of the unit that you build purely because you want to not die to cavalry. And the Abyss guns are what does all your main work. The stable here, though, is a big threat because this composition for n0eL is so Chukanu heavy that 5 Hussar could just kill him immediately.
Yeah, for sure. Vincent does have the entire TP line, and n0eL has not really contested that yet. And it is worth mentioning that it does have the stagecoach on it, so it may give him the edge he needs. He can just put all his settlers on food, which is what he's done. Oh no, he's 6 in coin, and then the trade route on coin, and he's going to be able to get those Huss out. And like you said, if you get just enough...
the 5 Hussar are out. The Jiang are in position there, and I think that the barracks and house are actually going to wall off effectively for n0eL, and he's going to be able to survive against the Hussar.
So Lionston sends 5 Jans. I guess that's the best thing he can do at this point. Like,
sort of like when you run out of cards to send, you just send whatever's left.
Exactly,
I think that n0eL actually held it off very effectively. You can see he didn't die to the Hussars, and that was what he needed to do. The barracks and house in that case actually served to block the cavalry pathing, so they worked in n0eL's favor.
And n0eL is aging up.
Is not high.
He is aging up. And I think the right choice here is just to siege down the barracks, the artillery foundry, the house, and then just move back and just wait.
Yeah.
Because obviously China, they're strongest in Fortress. He's going to go to Fortress Age, and he's going to send shipments, and then he's going to win.
Yeah.
And so that's really all he has to do.
Yeah, what's so critical here, and what n0eL is... let me start over. What's so critical for n0eL to do, and what's so critical for Lions then to have happen, is to not have these cavalry basically kill all of Chukanu, right? If n0eL doesn't lose this army, then he goes to Fortress and he's fine. But if he does lose this army, the entire game changes. And you can see that. That's why Lionston is so committed to taking this off.
Yeah.
He's sending all these SR in, and he's pushing in really far to try to get this to happen. And when n0eL is so careful not to have this happen.
Yeah.
These SR are so low, but they're still snaring.
So, yeah, something that I like to say that applies to most situations is when you're fighting an age behind, you have about 2 minutes from the time they age up to put pressure on them, or they'll just outscale you.
Yeah, I think the Hussar are going down. I think n0eL lost more units than he wanted to, but he didn't lose the entire army. If he lost the entire army, he would have lost the game. It didn't happen, so now he's okay again.
He's in a great spot, and Lionsden can't really age up behind this. He just doesn't have the economy for it. Even though he has the full trade post route with Stagecoach, it's just not quite enough.
Exactly, yeah. I think that it would be nice to see n0eL start to contest this, though. The trade route does provide a lot of economic value.
Yeah, and it's already Stagecoached as well, so you might as well siege it down and take it over.
I would say, I guess the economic unit calculator doesn't include the trading post, but each one is somewhere between 4 and 5 villagers, I believe. And so it does actually provide a lot of value if their economies roughly even with each other.
And now we start to see those fortress shipments coming in. We got meteor hammers coming out, and in response to that, we see Lionston sending artillery attack.
Artillery attack's a good card, but it's not what he needs. It's probably the last card he has in H2, maybe besides 4 villagers. Well, he has a couple left, but yeah, he's definitely looking for other cards to be sending right now. And now we do have a big cavalry mass coming from the goal. I think this makes Lion's Den situation dangerous.
Yeah, very. This next fight is going to be very decisive.
It lets n0eL basically force a fight, right? Because if the cavalry get the snare, Lion's Den is not able to retreat. He has to be fighting, and if it's not a good fight, then he loses the game.
Yeah.
The same thing sort of happens for Lion's Den, right? If he has cavalry, so he can force a fight as well. He has quite a few cavalry now. So if n0eL gets a bad fight, he loses the game. So it's the issue is, though, I think that the army size is so much larger for n0eL right now that he's not really in danger of losing the game.
Yeah, exactly. He can take some trades that are not cost effective and just wipe Lionston's army out and then just win because he's an age ahead and still has shipments to send.
Mm-hmm. It looks like he might be going for... Oh, actually, never mind. He's going to just kill all those villagers. And that might be why he needs to win the game, yeah.
That's game, honestly. He only has 25 villagers. He has not sent the church, or made the church and sent the upgrade.
Yeah.
So, how many is that?
Yeah, it looked like he was going for the trading post and then just happened to notice the villagers. But yeah, he actually... If he had gotten just a slightly better angle, he would have actually killed all the villagers in one. Oh, and actually, he might do that.
And that's about a third of his economy right there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's pulling away these cavalry because he knows that the trading post is not nearly as important as 10 villagers.
Yeah, for sure. And Lionston's army is just kind of sitting in the middle of the map. He doesn't know... Honestly, he probably doesn't know what to do at this point. It's like, he can attack, and he can trade pretty well, and he can, take his army out. But he's going to lose all or most of his, and then where is he going to be at that point? He's going to be 18 villagers to 43. And
exactly, yeah.
It's not where you want to be.
Now, n0eL's actually maybe perhaps misstepping a little bit by going for this trading post. It's such a difficult trading post to take because it's it's far away from everything else. And this is something that Lionston's happy about because it's buying time. He knows he can't take the fight, but by not having the army right in his base and instead taking the trading post, he's able to do other things that he wants and buy time to build up an army that can contest this. That said, in some sense, he will never have to contest n0eL's army.
Yeah.
Ooh, intervention coming out, and probably not quite on the right side. A couple of those muskets are going to go down, but I think we're going to see the decisive fight coming in right now. I would like to see n0eL just smash the cabin here.
Yeah, it's honestly all he really has to do here. Okay, so they're snared now. They can't back out of this.
Yeah, this is certainly... If n0eL wins this fight, he wins the game immediately. If he loses the fight, he doesn't lose the game. But it'll be a lot harder. But I believe, yeah, it's just going to be... The cap comes in and takes everything down, and Lionston calls GG.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best of 5 has been concluded. n0eL has taken the third point, giving him the majority that he needs to win the best of 5, and so being, he will advance to the round of 8. Well played, both players. That was a very, very intense and fun series to watch. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited to see n0eL progress even further in the tournament. And with that being said, Lionston had some admirable play there, and he did well with what he had.